Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault. I want to throw a few shout outs. Lana and Mark, thank you for tuning in, as well as many, many others. Let's listen to the music for just a moment. And that is Jeff Healey, The Roadhouse Blues, featured in the 1998 Patrick Swayze-led movie Roadhouse. And the reason we're diving into the movie Roadhouse tonight is because there's just been a re-release of the movie, well, a remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal that was released this past week. So tonight we're going to do a little bit different show. We're going to compare and contrast the original Roadhouse with the remake. But before we get into the show, please go to all of our social media pages. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. Let's get into the show. It's just some fun music. It's got a fun soundtrack. It kind of gets you in the mood to get into a barroom brawl. I don't recommend you doing that, but it gets you into the mindset of doing that. Oh yeah. So in Roadhouse, earlier I said road trip, and it's not even the same type of movie, but in Roadhouse, it's about a bouncer hired to clean up the baddest honky-tonk in a Mississippi town. Armed with his black belt in karate and a degree in philosophy, Patrick Swayze as Dalton sets out to tame the Double Deuce for the owner. There's a mean person in town that wants to, they pretty much run the town. And they want to, pretty much skim money off the top. And they think that the town owes them for, the town being vibrant. And that's some musical stylings of Jeff Healey, as I stated. Let's get into the show. So the movie came out in 1989. It was filmed in 1988. And, at this point you have to think Patrick Swayze was still relatively early on in his career. He had some movies that had come out, but he hadn't yet hit the peak. And this is still the point in his career where he was being molded into an action hero. Because you have Roadhouse, you have Next of Kin, you have Point Break, and you've got a couple of those films that were setting him up. But let's get into the movie. So tonight's movie was in 1989, directed by Roddy Harrington. And if you don't know director Roddy Harrington, he has directed a couple different things. Jack's Back, Roadhouse, Gladiator, but not the Ridley Scott, Russell Crowe Gladiator. Striking Distance, A Murder of Crows, The Stick-Up Eyewitness, and Bobby Jones' Stroke of Genius. Now, let's get into a little bit of his filmography for just a moment. Jack's Back is a James Spader movie from 1988 where James Spader, spoiler alert, plays a serial killer who bases his murders on the killings of Jack the Ripper. I haven't watched this film, but it has been on my radar to watch. And this is the kind of movie that I think you have to be in the right kind of mindset for. So I do want to dive into that. You've got Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. And then you've got this little gem called Gladiator that came out. And it's got I forget the name of the main white lead, but it's got Cuba Gooding Jr. also. And it's kind of like this little boxing film, but like a street kind of fight. They have this street fighter, and then from what I recall, he's kind of led into the world of boxing. And I happened to watch this movie in the back of a van. And it didn't sound good, did it? In the back of a van. It was a van my family was going. We were going to a Cincinnati Bengals game in Cincinnati, Three River Stadium. And this said van was one of those vans that had the little TV in the back. It had a VCR. It also had a Nintendo. So I thought this was the coolest van at the time. Probably still do. I might move into a van just to save money. I'll replace the. I don't even think I'll replace the Nintendo, but I might replace the VCR with a DVD player or something like that. But it was a nice little van. The back seat actually laid down, which I didn't lay down in it, but I thought it was cool. And then we were watching the movie Gladiator on the way to the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Cleveland Browns. That's how far back it was. I was a young tyke. I was a wee one. When we were in the game, we were in the end zone, and I do remember this vividly, that I kept feeling like little droplets of liquid on my shoulder. I turned around and looked, and there were some drunks behind me, and they were spilling their not spilling, but they were dripping their alcoholic beverage on my shoulder, on my 12-year-old shoulder. And I think, honestly, now looking back, from this moment I've just learned, that's when I realized I do not like beer. Just from the smell of the beer hitting my shoulder, it made me not want to ever really try it again. And hence, I other than doing it for the show, when we did the beer challenge one time, 1 shot a minute of beer for 60 minutes. Other than those type of things, beer has never been something that I've gravitated toward. So thank you to the customers or the fans behind me at the Cincinnati Bengals football game. You've got Striking Distance from 1993. That was a Bruce Willis, Sarah Jessica Parker film. I've seen it once. I think it's on a couple different streaming sites right now. I remember it was uneven when I watched it. Some of the cast members were miscast, but Mr. Willis does a good job, and it's kind of good to go back and watch some of his early 90s work, considering the condition and state that he's in now. A Murder of Crows, that's another Cuba Gooding Jr. movie, which I haven't seen. The Stick Up, Eyewitness, or Bobby Jones' Stroke of Genius. That is a Jim Caviezel movie, but I've never seen the last couple. So Roddy Harrington had not really done anytime you make a movie, you've beat the odds and you've went above and beyond and you've made a product and put it out there, because that's one of the most difficult things to do. Not only is it difficult in the assembly of making the film, but finding cast members, scheduling everything so that it just works out together. It is very difficult to find that, and to find reliable people that can not only do the job, but love the job, and they'll go above and beyond to make film or whatever creative endeavor happen. So to filmmakers out there, if you're able to get a cast of people that really have the drive and the love to go above and beyond and make something, hold on to that cast, because you can film and you can shoot them and you can edit their performance and make it so much better. But if you have those elements, you can do a lot of great things. The cast in this movie is a good cast. You've got Patrick Swayze as James Dalton, Kelly Lynch as Dr. Elizabeth, Doc Clay, Sam Elliott as Wade Garrett, and Ben Gazzara as Brad Wesley. We've seen each and every one of these characters or actors and actresses in various films. Patrick Swayze, like I said before, you've got Next of Kin, you've got Ghost, you've got Point Break, you've got Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, you've got Donnie Darko. He was in the TNT series The Beast. So Patrick Swayze has quite a resume. Tall Tales, the Disney film he did in the mid '90s as well, and later on, and I always felt a little bit bad for Patrick Swayze because he kind of faded off a little bit there near the end until Donnie Darko, and then Donnie Darko brought him back a little bit, and then he segued into his TV show The Beast. But I always thought that Patrick Swayze never really got the role that I think that he should have. I guess Ghost, maybe some of these movies now, like Next of Kin or Roadhouse, even Point Break, give him a lot of accolade. But I do think, and he had I think he had Gone Like the Wind. He had a single out as well. So that's really good. And we'll play that a little bit later in the show as well, I'm sure. But you've got this cast of characters. You've got Sam Elliott. Now, Sam Elliott, even back... Now, I hadn't seen this movie in quite some time. Probably, I would have to honestly say it's been 20 years since I've seen Roadhouse. And then I knew this new one was being remade, coming out. So what better time than to go back and revisit revisit it, which is what we're doing tonight. But there are many things that Sam Elliott's been in, and he plays this part really good. He really does. Ben Gazzara, he was in a film that we discussed a few weeks back, Buffalo 66, and I had honestly forgot that he was one of the main villains in this film. So let us get into a little bit of facts before we dive into the movie. As I said, we've got 2 films we're getting into tonight. So facts, and I didn't know this. Patrick Swayze hurt his knee during the filming of Roadhouse. That's why he chose to make Ghost next, because it was less strenuous. He turned down roles in Tango and Cash and Predator 2. And see, that goes to show what I was saying earlier, is that they were touting, and maybe he was as well, as being the next action star. Because if you go back and look, it would have been Roadhouse, Next of Kin, Tango and Cash, which I think Gabriel... I'm trying to remember. Gabriel Cash... I think that's the Stallone role. I'm trying to remember. But he would have been either opposite Kurt Russell or opposite Stallone. So that would have been a completely different kind of film. And Mike Harrigan, and I think that was Danny Glover. Excuse me, I have the hiccups here. That was Danny Glover's character in Predator 2. And as far as sequels go, now, although Predator 1 is, the first one is an action classic. I mean, everything about it still holds up to this day. And it's going on, it came out in like 87. So it's going on, 40 years old, and it still holds up. Same thing for Predator 2. No, Danny Glover does a fantastic job. And it would have been very, very interesting to see how Patrick Swayze would have played this role. in an alternate universe, we would be able to get to see this, and because it's a gritty film. It's got Gary Busey in it, and it's obviously got the predator that hunts in the city instead of the jungle. But yeah, he due to an injury on Roadhouse, he turned down those roles, and he ended up making the romantic classic Ghost with Demi Moore and the Oscar-winning Whoopi Goldberg. And also, he had Dirty Dancing early on, so I think that was another reason it might have been a little bit harder for Patrick Swayze to transition into just these primarily, action roles. Because he had a large female fan base, which is great to have in the cinema. But I don't know how well, a lot of the female fans at the time, would they have followed him into some of these hardcore action films. And, maybe Roadhouse, Next of Kin, maybe even Point Break, because you've got Keanu Reeves there as well. But, some of these other ones, Tango and Cash, Predator 2, that's more of a male-dominated genre, and typically more males watch those kind of films. So I don't know how much his female audience would have, really helped the box office in terms of that. So I think he did a fantastic job. You're hurt on a set. Let's take it a little bit easy the next time with Ghost, which Ghost ended up being Patrick Swayze's most popular movie financially and critically at the box office as well. The film's original tagline was referencing Patrick Swayze's success in Dirty Dancing. So the tagline originally was, "The dancing's over. Now it gets dirty." That was the original tagline for Roadhouse. Another little piece of little trivia that you may not know is Annette Bening was originally cast as the Doc. She was replaced by Kelly Lynch, who was under contract with United Artists. They released the film, but Lynch claims that Annette Bening was fired due to a lack of chemistry with Patrick Swayze. And that could be completely true. I know Annette Bening is married to Warren Beatty. She's been in a couple of films of his throughout the years. But I honestly, other than In Dreams, starring her and Robert Downey Jr. from, if I had to go back and think, probably 1999, that's been the only film that I've actually seen her in. She was originally supposed to be Catwoman in Batman Returns. She ended up getting pregnant, had to drop out, and Michelle Pfeiffer took the role. So, I think they did a pretty good job, I guess, of Kelly Lynch. I think that could have actually been played by any up-and-comer at that point. So, that's not to put her down, but it's more of a thankless role. This is more of James Dalton's role and even Wade Garrett, other than the Doctor. So kickboxing champion and action star Benny Uriguez, I've got that last name wrong, but he's known as Benny the Jet. He trained Patrick Swayze for the role of Dalton. There's a lot of scenes where Dalton uses martial arts and fighting techniques such as this manner, and he was trained by kickboxing champion Benny the Jet. The last bit of trivia is, even though Sam Elliott has been in a variety and an array of films throughout the years, he has claimed that he is most recognized for his role in Roadhouse. But he almost turned down the role because he thought it was too similar to his role in Mask from 1985, and that's the movie with Eric Stoltz and Cher. The movie cost a cool $17 million. In America, it made $30 million and a total worldwide of $56.3 million. So the movie was a financial success, And if you think about it, this is 1989 dollars, which would probably translate to, 70, 80 million dollars today. So this was a very popular and financial success on release. Rotten Tomatoes has a 43% positive, although Rotten Tomatoes didn't really exist back then. 67% audience score and a 6.7 on IMDb, which is the number one app I use, Internet Movie Database. You can go on IMDb and look up virtually any movie that's been released. You can find out the info, some of the facts, locations it was shot at. Click on actors and actresses and see what other films they've been in. And it's just a great tool and a great app to look up things about film. And I honestly, I'm ashamed that I'm on there so much. I'll be in IMDb, and then I'll have someone say, what are you doing? And I'll click off of it because I'm ashamed that I'm on there so much. So I really am a nerd as far as looking up trivia and knowledge and anything film, because even though I do a radio show at heart, and I am a director and a filmmaker, the lifestyle and the mindset that I have. So yeah, IMDb is the way to go. Let's get into a little bit of the plot and the story. Like I said, you've got a hired bouncer, Dalton. He's hired to clean up the baddest honky-tonk in a Missouri town. He's armed with his black belt in karate and a degree in philosophy. He's sensitive. He's a sensitive Dalton, and he wants you to be nice. He doesn't want you to create a scene inside the bar. Take it outside. Only fight and have violence if necessary. And he sets out to tame the patrons of the Double Deuce for the new owner. So that's basically the plot in a nutshell. And it is kind of an original plot if you think about it, because how many movies are out there where the basic plot of the movie is a bouncer is hired to clean up this bar? That's basically the complete premise of the movie. Other than the remake, is there another movie where you're hired to clean up a bar? Not really. And that's part of the charm. That is part of the charm of Roadhouse. Now let's get into characters. Like I said, we're going to just stick to the main characters. We've got Patrick Swayze as Dalton, and his full name is James Dalton, but he's usually claimed, he's usually talked about and called just Dalton. Kelly Lynch and Sam Elliott as Wade, and Ben Gazzara as Brad. Those are the four main characters of the movie. But you also have Jeff Healey playing in the film, playing his music, and that's a nice addition. He died at the age of 41 a couple years back, and but he's playing the guitar, he's singing, and his music kind of gives this movie a feel to it, a little bit more of an identity. And even though he's only in the movie and has a few lines, his presence, I think, is felt throughout the movie. And it just adds to the vibe that this is just like a down and dirty honky-tonk where they're drink and they're having fun. And originally, when he first goes down, a lot of bad stuff is going down. Because really, he goes in and he kind of like looks around when Dalton first goes to the Double Deuce, and he sees what's going on. He has a keen eye right away that shows like, this guy's skimming money off the top. This lady over here, she's selling drugs. This guy here, he doesn't have any heart, and he wants to get rid of quite a few of the people that work there, because he wants to create this atmosphere where people can go into this bar, drink, enjoy each other's company, have fun, dance, listen to live music, and leave. And that's how it should be at a bar. You don't want to go to a bar where glasses are flying, fists are flying, you've got, people getting up on tables, causing a scene, always a bar fight, always having to clean up a mess. That is why Dalton is coming. To make sure you have a good time at the bar. And Dalton isn't the best. Dalton, as he claims in the film, is the second best other than Wade Garrett. So that's basically what's going on. Now there's an evil man named Brad Wesley, and he's kind of this rich, pompous guy. He owns a lot of the town. He pretty much robs from several of the townsfolk's business, and he doesn't want Dalton in the bar. Now, the only reason, and maybe I missed it, but what I can gather is he wants Dalton out of the bar because he's conducting some of these, some of these shady practices within the bar, selling drugs. Maybe some prostitution's going on there, and that's pretty much what I take it. But it's a pretty simple story. It's a simple story that anyone can follow and have fun with, and it's just kind of a beat 'em up kind of movie. But it also shows that Dalton is a caring person. He's killed someone in the past, but I don't think it was an intentional thing. And come to find out, and there are spoilers in this. This movie came out in 1989. So I'm going to get spoilers on a film that old. I'm sorry. I just have to do that. But, Dalton does not want to take advantage of anyone. He's there to do the job. It's not a personal thing, and he tells them, this is not personal. They're not calling you names because it's personal. So don't take it personal. And that's also a good lesson to learn in life. A lot of times we get called names. A lot of times things aren't going our way. We blame someone else. I've done it. You've done it. People have wronged us in the past. And what do? We want to lash out. We want to call them names. We want to be petty. We want to do this and that. Go by Dalton's philosophy. Be nice. Be nice. Take the fight outside, or metaphorically outside. And quite often, early in the movie, he gets the people outside that want to fight him. He leaves them out there and he walks back in. So that's part of what's going on as well. Now, the score and the music, like I said, this would be your typical 80s score. Let's see if we can find a little bit of score right now. Like I said, we have Jeff Healey, the Jeff Healey Band, and he does a great job. Like I said, it's just fun music that you would hear at a honky tonk. Hello, everyone listening on Facebook and watching on Facebook. But without some of the songs of Jeff Healey Band and him playing live and being there in the movie actually adds a lot to it. It really does. So if you like these kind of honky-tonk songs, kind of like down and dirty bar songs, kind of fun, I want to dance, I want to have a good time, you're out on a Saturday night at a bar, this is the kind of music that you would want to hear. But it's also the kind of music that the thugs and roughhousing people and people that get drunk and just can't control themselves, this is the movie that you hear the clanking of the glass. You hear the punch of the fist going into somebody's stomach or their face. Don't you think? So yeah, that's pretty much a lot of the music throughout, and it's more, a lot of the times on the show we talk about the score, where this movie has more of just a soundtrack that's sprinkled out throughout the movie. Well, not even sprinkled out, it plays a character within the movie. And as you can tell, why should it not? Now, like I said, with originality, I mean, Dalton's hired to clean up a bar. I don't know how original that premise is, but I can't think of really another movie offhand where it's quite that simple of a premise. And that's all it needs to be. This movie is not trying to be anything other than what it shows you that it is. So the fact that that's the simple premise, it plays to the favor of the movie, because you're not trying to sit there and watch the movie and think of a deeper meaning or dig deeper because of this character does this, or why are they doing this? Why doesn't this make sense? It's nothing like that at all. The movie is out there for you to see, for you to watch, for you to enjoy for what it is. And then you've got, the good-looking Patrick Swayze. A lot of people I didn't realize at the time, even though now you've got, Easy on the Eyes, Sam Elliott. You had that for the females, I guess you could say, or even males, whomever. And then you have the fighting, which a lot of people like a good little bar fight. Now, I don't know if I'd want to be involved or witness a bar fight in real life, to be honest with you. I've witnessed a fight in real life right outside of Superior, Arizona. And I did turn around and go back and watch it. But it wasn't in a bar, and I wasn't there. That leads us to the poster. The original official motion picture poster is posted on my Facebook. You can look it up on Google. But you've got Patrick Swayze kind of with one leg up on a brick wall, Roadhouse, and these neon blue letters. And in some instances, there's a few little scenes on the right side of the poster. There's a couple different variations, but, it pretty much gives you what you think it is. The poster is a good representation of the movie. Now, would I recommend Roadhouse, the original, yes or no? Yeah, I would. It's a fun movie. It's a movie that's full of nostalgia. It is a nice feather in the cap of Patrick Swayze. And it kind of takes you back a little bit back to more simpler times. And it also has, going back to the the music, it has songs that end like that. The build up, and then the kind of slow decline in songs we've heard in that way hundreds of times. But yeah, this is a good testament to Patrick Swayze. Is it my favorite Patrick Swayze movie? No, it isn't. But it's not bad, and it's very enjoyable. I would recommend it. I think you're going to have a good time watching it. If you've seen it before, then it's going to be a nice throwback, and it's just fun. It's just a fun movie. And I would say give it another try. It's on Amazon Prime right now. If you haven't watched it in a while, then yeah, I think you should. I really think that you should watch it and see what you think about it. So let's get into, we don't usually do this, but we're going to get into now the brand new Roadhouse movie. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Real Talk on 92.5 WLSD The Vault. All kinds of great programming is on this station and the sister station, 93.5 WAXM. Now we're going to get into the most recent Roadhouse 2024. Just came out last week. This one is about an ex-UFC fighter, Dalton, who takes the job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse, only to discover that his paradise is not all that it seems. So basically, you would say it's the same premise in a way as the original Roadhouse. I've got two different itineraries you can hear. So there is a little bit of planning and research that goes into the movie. I ended up watching this Roadhouse first, meaning I'd seen the original many years ago, probably 20 years ago, and I didn't want to dilute the new one with comparing it to the original right away. So therefore I went in and I watched Roadhouse. This one's directed by Doug Liman, and if you don't know the name, I know that you have seen some of the films or have heard some of the films that he has directed. He started off on a little bit of an independent film starring Vince Vaughn named Swingers in 1996. He went on to the Quentin Tarantino-esque film Go in 1999. Then he stepped into action and stayed that way for The Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the Hayden Christensen movie, Jumper, the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow, The Wall, American Made with Tom Cruise again, and Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, Doug Liman was a little bit upset when this new Roadhouse started streaming on Amazon, as he says it was expected to go theatrically. And I don't know, to be honest with you, I'm all for the theatrical experience. But I think this movie is best viewed at home, just watching it on Amazon. And that's not even saying anything bad about it at all. So you've got the cast in the 2024 remake. You've got Jake Gyllenhaal, Daniela Melchior, and Conor McGregor. That's Conor McGregor. Now, I know Conor McGregor's a fighter. I know that he's Irish. He has some Irish whiskey called Proper 12 that's out and about to be sold in a drink. I've heard it's not good, but you might like it. I don't know. But I do get the sense, because I've seen a couple of interviews from him in the past, and he does play himself 100% of the movie. Let's get into a little bit of facts of this movie, because I like to give a little bit of facts in context of the movie that we're discussing. As you might, if in case you're tuning in, we're doing a Roadhouse battle tonight, the 1989 version versus the 2024 version. So some facts from the 2024 is the restaurant next to Stevens Bookstore is named the Double Deuce Restaurant, which, like you know, is also the name of the bar in the Roadhouse original film. This is kind of like a nod to the old Roadhouse movie, because I think that they did not want to disrespect the memory of Roadhouse and making this take place in the exact same bar. So they call the bar in the movie the Roadhouse, instead of the Double Deuce. Jake Gyllenhaal underwent extensive training with renowned trainer Jason Walsh to prepare for his role as the ex-UFC fighter. The preparation involved a multi-leveled regimen focusing on strength, conditioning, and nutrition, highlighting Gyllenhaal's dedication to the role. And I will give this to Jake Gyllenhaal. He's a very underrated actor, I do believe. I've watched a lot of his films over the years, probably 10 or 15 of the ones that he's done, and he's a good actor. He does at some point in almost every role, maybe excluding Nightcrawler, exhibit a tiny bit of goofiness. Just a tiny bit of goofiness. And that's no real exception here either. But it doesn't distract from the movie and it doesn't take you out of the movie. But I've had a couple of people, actually yesterday and today, earlier when this was discussed, 2 people actually mentioned that to me. So that is kind of true. But still, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. And he's in Donnie Darko and Nightcrawler. And those are 2 fantastic films. So if he wants to be... And he's in an underrated movie called October Sky, which was one of his earlier roles, which is actually a really good movie as well. The filmmakers sought to innovate how the fight scenes were filmed, so the team developed a new multi-pass technique to make the brawls look more realistic, making a departure from traditional fight choreography. Now, when I was watching this the other night, I did notice that all the action scenes were filmed a little bit differently. Quick zooms, panoramic, panning around quickly. It looked like some of the scenes might have been in 4K, whereas not all the movie was. And I don't want to say it was distracting, but I could tell a difference coming from kind of like a cinematic background. You as a viewer might be able to tell these as well. Like I said, it doesn't distract from the film, but it was a noticeable thing as well. So some of the scenes in the movie were actually filmed during the UFC Fight 285, event of the UFC 285. And there's a couple of flashbacks in the film of Jake as Dalton, and he's getting weighed. There's some fights going on, and it's kind of a flashback of an event that takes place. I won't give spoilers away on this film since it's just released, but yeah. Yeah, that was kind of like a little bit what was going on there. It was part of the UFC. Thank you for the thumb up, Thomas. Pain don't hurt. That is a good line. That is a good line. So director Doug Liman was drawn to the character of Dalton for being a gentle, caring person who is simultaneously lethal. The complexity made the role appealing in the reimagining of the cult classic Roadhouse. And that is something that is true about Dalton in both films. These are light-hearted films, but you do get a sense that Dalton, although he is a butt kicker and he's going to kick you all over the place and beat you up, that is not what he is at heart. That is the last line of defense for him. Just like in the original, Dalton in this one, played by Gyllenhaal, he's brutal. He's a little bit more brutal than the Dalton as Patrick Swayze, but he's beefed up, he's bulked up, and he looks like he could go toe-to-toe with Conor McGregor. He really does. He even looks, and I've said this at least 2 different times, he looks like he's probably in better shape than McGregor, and a lot less cocky in the film as well. The budget of this movie, from what I can tell, skyrocketed to $100 million compared to the budget of $17 million for the original. And it's not made any money as far as box office because it's on Amazon Prime. So I'm not 100% sure how they calculate. They go by, you get more subscribers, but how do they know 100% that people that are subscribing are going to be subscribing to watching Roadhouse, the new one? Now, I know that you can go on there and you can check and see how many views and streams it's had, but I do find spending that kind of money on straight to streaming, a little iffy. But that's just me. It's got a 59% positive on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a little bit higher than the original, but it's got a lower audience score at 54%, and compared to 67 for the original. It's got a 6.2 on IMDb and a 6.7 on the original. And the reason that I think some of this is true is because it is a remake. And typically when you have the remake, it's not going to be looked at quite as good as the original. Except maybe Dune. I think that is done better. So let's get into a little bit of the plot and the story. The plot and the story basically are the same. Dalton is kind of hired by this lady to kind of turn her roadhouse around and make it a place where there's not as many fights. Patrons can come in. There's not things getting destroyed all the time. And basically, the bad guy is, kind of the same. Conor McGregor is the main bad guy, but there's a higher up bad guy who is ordering Conor McGregor, whose character's name is, I don't have the character's name written down, so excuse me for that. But anyway, we'll just say Conor. He's kind of a hired hand. He's a crazy hired hand. But there's the weaker boss who, is basically doing to the town folk in this film like they did the first movie. Characters, they're basically the same, I would say. Dalton, Jake Gyllenhaal, he stands out as, he always does a good job. And he goes the length that he needs to go, because once they change the character as just a regular bouncer to an ex-UFC fighter, then Gyllenhaal went all out and did what he needed to do to get his body into shape to be this character. He could have played it the same way, I guess, in a way, if they changed it and he wasn't UFC. But you know that when you're going into the gym and you're putting that much work into transforming your physical body to inhabit this character, that you actually do care about what you're doing. It's not like Marlon Brando showing up 30 or 40 pounds overweight for Apocalypse Now. Although that did turn out great, that wasn't what was in mind at the time, which in essence basically means, in my opinion, Brando did not care about what it took to do the role. He was wearing an earwig at that point, getting his lines pumped in. But anyway, Jake Gyllenhaal goes all out for this character, and I think he does a fantastic job with what he's given. Favorite scene, least favorite scene. I didn't do that in the original. I'll do that with both of them right now. My favorite scene in the original film, is I like the introduction of Wade. I think it's a phone call. You see in the background Wade is bouncing, because apparently there's just bouncers all around the country, and they have this little bouncer union, and they call each other and what's going on, how's your bouncing going, and that's no exception when basically Dalton is giving Wade a call. And that's a fun scene because as he's on the phone, Wade's on the phone, there's kind of like a fighting starting and brewing up in the background, so therefore Wade has to get off the phone and basically, take care of business. I think that was a fun scene in the original. I think it's a fun scene also when a lot of Patrick Swayze as Dalton's dialogue is talking with the man that he rents the place that he's going to stay when he rents. Now, Gyllenhaal rents a houseboat in the new one, which is sufficient. But the new one kind of gets, and I don't know if I really have a favorite or least favorite scene in the remake. The fighting scenes are brutal. They're more brutal than in the original. But it's kind of more of an action film because there are explosions, there are boat chases, there are, some things that go into that way. So, hey. So, it's hard to compare it 100% because it's not the exact same kind of film. The first one lacked the boat chases. It lacked a lot of the things that it does have this. The original, now I found this funny. back in the 80s, early 90s, if you're old enough to remember, there was a time where these Bigfoot vehicles, Bigfoot trucks, were around. They would hold, you could go see Bigfoot, drive over cars and crush the cars. And there's a scene in the original where I'd wondered, I was like, I'd forgotten about Bigfoot or a big truck like that in the scene in the movie. And the only reason they have that in the movie is because later in the film, Brad is trying to get revenge on one of the townsfolk. So what does he do? He has one of his henchmen ride over the cars in his auto lot with the Bigfoot, which was the only reason that car was even in the movie. There's nothing to that extent in the new one, but that would be way out of character to have a Bigfoot truck trample over some things in South Florida. So they weren't just going to do that in the new one. So score and music, you've got a lot of different contemporary music in this. A lot of hard-hitting music, kind of some harder rock that you wouldn't find necessarily in the original. And here's a little bit of that music. And see, that's kind of like, it fits well because you can see this music lining up more with a UFC fighter as they're training, as the flashbacks, as they're fighting, as they're getting beat to a bloody pulp. Whereas this music would not really fit in with the original at all. Because, like we said, we had Jeff Healey playing the Bard honky tonk songs, which encapsulates the film much better with the music as this one does with this music. But this kind of does fit the vibe of the new film as well. And it's got some Post Malone in there as well. I think Daltrey, even though he's not hard rock. It's got some Black Sabbath, maybe even some Metallica. So you've got like a lot of harder music that scores this film. And they do a good job with that. They really do. I can't give any bad reviews on that. It might not be the type of music that you would necessarily just sit down and listen to if you're not into it, but I hope that watching the film that you could appreciate that these kind of songs up the ante on the fighting scenes. You can't have Gary Jules' Mad World playing when Conor McGregor and Jake Gyllenhaal are fighting and beating each other's brains out. It just wouldn't fit. So I think this movie does a good job of incorporating some music and score. Originality, I mean, it's a remake. How original can it be? It does try to change a few things, and I do appreciate that it does that. And I think it separates itself enough from the original film that if you really wanted to call this movie something other than Roadhouse and have different characters' names, you could probably get away with it being a different film. And, like I said, there's a few things that tie one film to the other. But if you erase those things and get rid of that, then I think it could stand alone on its own film. I really do. So it's hard to really compare and contrast both movies because they're so diverse. I mean, they're 25 years apart from one another. The poster of the new one, there's a couple different. The one that I had posted, which is on my Facebook page if you want to check that out, Ryan Parker, is a contrast. They both have, the original had Swayze kind of with his leg propped up against the wall. There was 3 different distinct scenes on the right side of the poster, throughout the movie. But the new one with Jake Gyllenhaal just has Jake Gyllenhaal. It's kind of like this bluish gray tint to it. You can tell he means business. He's standing there solo, and he's got like a fighting look and a fighting glance, letting you know he's not one to be messed with. I'm the one that's going to be taking care of the Roadhouse. And if you want to step into my domain, I'm going to kick your butt. That's kind of the vibe that I got from the poster, and it works well. Like I said before, Jake Gyllenhaal, the camera loves him, and he does a very good job, not only of the characters that he's done in the past, but picking up of Dalton, which is a beloved character, because this could be a film where he takes on this role, and most people might not like him. Oh, you're trying to do a hack job of taking the place of Patrick Swayze, but he's not doing that at all. He's taking the foundation that was laid by the first Roadhouse, and then they're making it their own. And I think they're showing respect to it as well. And not only the little nods that they do, like with the Double Deuce and things like that, but they change enough to make it stand on its own. Whereas the first one took place in a Missouri town, this one takes place in the Florida Keys. It has more action sequences other than just barroom fights, and I think it does a good job of separating the two while paying homage to the first one as well. We've got, so this brings me to, would I recommend the new Roadhouse? That is a very difficult question to ask. Several people that I had talked to in the past were not looking forward to it. Some people said it was garbage and not to even watch it, don't waste your time. And that is really how I base a lot of the films that I watch. Do I feel that I have wasted my time spending an hour and a half, 2 hours? 2 hours is pushing it. This movie was, I think, 2 hours and 1 minute. Now, I was doing a couple of other things during part of it. Playing a couple games of Uno, which is a weekly thing, almost a daily thing. But I wasn't really distracted and not paying attention as well. But yeah, I would say if you've got 2 hours to spend, you enjoyed the original, you like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor because he does a good job, then give it a chance. I will give a spoiler alert because this was mentioned earlier. The original does have quite a bit of nudity in there, and I didn't realize that. You get to see Mr. Swayze's behind, and in the new one has a little bit of nudity as well. This is a spoiler alert for all the women out there. It's not Mr. Gyllenhaal's behind in the new one. Sorry to say that. It's Mr. Conor McGregor, which sources had told me was they could have done without seeing that. So I thought that I would just throw that out there for you all. But yeah, I would say go back, check out the original. They're both streaming on Amazon. But before you go back and watch the original, give this new one a try. It's got some good fight scenes, some good action scenes, probably 2 iffy CGI scenes that were kind of like, I could have done without that, but they did it. And, eat some popcorn. Enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously. And I think you will enjoy it. But, yeah, the original Roadhouse is better. But the new one's not too shabby. So thank you for tuning in tonight to this doubleheader of a show discussing Roadhouse 1989 to Roadhouse 2024. I'm not sure exactly what movie we're doing next week. I know the week after that, I think Jeremiah is going to be in the studio, and we're going to be doing the Jack Black, Kyle Gass movie, The Pick of Destiny, Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny, which is a movie that I have not seen. That's very rare for me to come on and do a movie that I've not seen, so I'm going to have to check out that this week. But in the meantime, before we end tonight, thank you for tuning in on 92.5 WLSD The Vault, also AM 1220, WLSDradio.com. Check out all the great programming on this station and the sister station. And if you want to check out our social media pages, please do that on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Don't think I'm going to do an episode of the Other People's Show tonight, but please tune in next week. There's going to be a good show since I didn't do one tonight. And we're going to be doing, I'm not sure what movie next week. TBA. But you all have a good night. Love you all, and enjoy the rest of your night. Good night.